Guys, we have like a 16,000 word email ahead of us, so hang in there, okay? Here we go. Guys, my email is cooked. No more traveling. Also, YOLOing is overrated. Make the most of every moment. Blah, this is stupid and generally unsatisfying. Give me purpose, give me the grind, and most importantly, give me no more traveling, gosh darn it. I mean, I'm sure my tune will change once my S recharges, but at least right now, I'm like, please, please, no more experiences. Getting home from Georgia was actually so nice. To be fair, Georgia was rough for various reasons, which I'm sure I'll expound to your chagrin, and perhaps mild amusement in a moment's time. But I've also just traveled like this whole summer, and I'm tired and would like to not do that, which is good, because having started chemo, I'm pretty sure I'll be doing very much of not that. But still, I reserve the right to demand rights in which I have no reasonable expectation of them being further violated. Because I'm a curmudgeon old man like that. Anyway, much has happened. I'm tired. I have no creative juices flowing through my veins, and so no intro shall be offered as a respite for your weary, enduring soul, as you plow through my machinations of poor prose and long-winded rambles. And also, I haven't said machinations in ages, so I just wanted to say it. So there you are. So yeah, let's see. After the last live email and Morgan's wackish old person party, I finished the last live and did Funame, edited that email, which I know you may think these things are not edited, but I assure you that I take at least an hour to edit each one of these, because otherwise they would not be readable. And then, as I finished that up, the Kiwis got back from Ellerslie and stopped by the house, and I was like, give me the summary, and they did. We ended up talking for like 2 hours about philosophy and Ellerslie, and if it's good or bad or whack or whatever, and it was good. Once they left, and that wrapped up, I just did Funame, took some pills, and then rested my psyche. I think it's cruel and unusual to place expectations upon how one ought to be sleeping. See, whenever I know I need to sleep, I, of course, concerned with the fact that I cannot. And that's dumb. Why am I and others like this? Why can't you just sleep when you want to? Like, why is it when you need to sleep, you can't? That just bites. But anyway, because I needed to sleep, and I couldn't sleep, and because I couldn't sleep, I super couldn't sleep, and so I ended up not sleeping. And so it was a very sleep-deprived affair the next morning. But whatever. So yeah, Katie's sister, and, her sister's name is unfortunately named Karen, and Em and I all drove 2 hours to the Ren Fair in Larkspur, which was way too hot. Like, the heat was oppressive and kind of ruined the experience, if I'm being honest. At least for me. But regardless, we were all fully costumed, which was very fun. Here are all of our outfits, which you can't see a picture of. I finally got to use the wizard outfit again after like 2 years, so that was fun. I also discovered the fact that I like capes. Capes are cool. So yeah, we got there. That was definitely a vibe, very much an established attraction kind of place. But see, the problem is like everything costs money. It's like you pay to pay some more, and that was lame. I brought $15 worth of cash because they only take cash, and like all of it was spent on cold drinks. But yeah, it was cool. Let me bestow upon you pictures. Woo! Picture. And yeah, that's all my pictures. I then started off being very busy. It started off being very busy, and then it got stupid busy. Like you're pushing through crowds everywhere, kind of busy. And it was honestly remarkable that so many nerds wanted to come out in that kind of heat. Also, speaking of nerds, I felt totally normal for once in my life. Like everyone around me was just so nerdy, I felt cool by comparison. By comparison, in the voice of News from Spurs. So yes, also, people watching was so interesting. Like, all the events and things were kind of mad at best, but the people, peak. Although there was this one final show that we watched before we left, and that was actually eventful. The stinking ENTP entertainer dude decided to pick me out of the audience, giving me the affectionate name Angel Cheeks, for God knows what reasons why. And, I was actually quite involved in that last show. However, I missed catching a marshmallow in my mouth 3 times in front of like 200 people. So that kind of killed my SE. And I got so close each time. But other than that scarring memory, it was a very fun time, and I kind of just hyped myself up and got myself into it. But yeah, overall, I would say the excursion was a failure. I don't regret going, but it could have been a lot better. Honestly, the Baby Red Fair with Neo, Sydney, and John way back was way more fun. But still, it wasn't bad, and I liked being in costume and seeing all the people. We had to leave a touch early to get me home in time for my Magic pre-release event, but honestly, it worked out, because by the time we got to that point, everyone was like dead and wanted to go anyway. So, we drove back, stopped for smoothies, because we were all dying of heat and hungry. You don't buy food at Ren Fair unless you want to be broke. And thankfully, we got back just in time for me to very quickly change and make it right before the pre-release. But that said, I lost my first 2 games at that pre-release and was super tired, so I ended up ducking out early, which was kind of sad, but overall a good call. Being able to do Fume with Mom instead of being stuck in a room with overweight nerds until 1 in the morning was clearly the better choice. I was then able to go to bed early because sleep deprivation, and as I was doing so, I was summoned to help Katie and Em get home, which I didn't want to do, but I obliged. And then we drove all the way to Katie's house, only for Em to remember she forgot her keys. So that sucked, but oh well. I got the job done, and then I was able to get a nice little bit of peaceful reading in before hitting Zach. The next morning, with cancer book work was done, I then did Funame and pills. From there, I responded to emails for a bit before kidnapping the Kiwis in my Phoenix and then taking them to Mafi Park early so that we could play spike ball. See, when they first got here, we played a few games, and they were like, okay, but not very skilled. But then, right after we were like finished talking the other night, Michael and Caden were telling me about how they've been practicing, and I was like, oh, you definitely sound better. So I rallied my best spikeball partner, the great Benj, obviously. And we ordained an allotment of 1 hour and 30 for spikeballing before the Ultimate Frisbee started. And not gonna lie, I expected them to be better, but not like Benj and I good, because no one beat Benj and I. But to my surprise, they were stinking good. Like they were basically even with me and Benj, and we were playing our best against them. And you must understand, this basically never happens. So it was actually super duper fun games. I think we played 6 games, 3 games, 3 wins for each game. I mean, each person won 3 times. And like the score difference between those games were pretty comparable as well. So yeah, genuinely very peak and very even. The rough bit though was at the end, after we all played our hearts out, we were like mega cooked. So once Frisbee started, I was like, reaches a frail hand toward the Frisbee. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still had some good moments for sure, but at the end of those 2 hours, I was low-key just walking everywhere like a zombie. I was straight done, like no more energy left. But even with me being dead, it was tasty, well worth it. Also, that Frisbee game had quite a few spectators. Alan came originally to play, but then he injured himself in like the first 10 minutes, so lol, he ended up spectating for an age. And then Nessa, Katie, and Em were all there as well, but they didn't play. I almost got Katie to play, and, you know, that almost happened, but then she and the rest of the girls decided it was better to stay on the sidelines. And coming to watch people play Ultimate Frisbee without playing just seems unthinkably boring to me, but oh well, to each their own. After that, the spectators, minus Alan, the Kiwis, Ben, and also Jake, went to get food. And I was originally going to go, but I was really tired. And then I thought about it, and I was like, I would rather go home and relax instead. Hence, I did that. Got home, took a very refreshing shower, did food, read my meditation book some, and then, like about midnight, head over to Ben's house to hang out with these people again. But as soon as I got there, Em had a mini catastrophe at her house that she was dog sitting for, and was kind of freaking out. So we all mobilized and helped her out. Personally, I think she overreacted. Like, the situation was literally just the washer had flooded the laundry room and the dog pooped on the floor somewhere. But she has inferior TE, so I get the situation feels abundantly more manageable to me than it does to her. Hence, I was glad to help out. After we got everything cleaned up and reordered, I went back to Ben's place and hung with the Kiwis briefly for being like, and I should go to bed. However, as I was leaving, Katie was complaining about some allergic reaction she was having to Emerson's dog from dog sitting. And I happened to have anti-allergy medication from Idaho, if you recall, at home. Hence, I invited her back to the house to get that, and we ended up watching an anime episode together before I went to bed. That night, I got like 3 hours of sleep, and since I had to leave for my EKG appointment in the obtuse hour of the morning, which, you know, was happening in about 45 minutes from when I woke up after 3 hours of sleep, I then was just like, well, I guess I might as well try and apply the things I'm learning from my meditation book, so I meditated for 35 minutes. I then got my EKG done, found out my heart was quite damaged from last round of chemo, which, you know, was rough, because, like, it started off God tier, and now it's a very poor functioning heart, but not a broken heart. But still, the level of disorder is pretty significant, though not quite clinical. And so I'm glad my heart works, but I'm still very sad that I've lost my previous epic heart. So yeah, that sucked, but what can you do? Once I got home, I napped, did food mate, woke up. Oh yeah, because I napped. I was like, that makes sense. Worked on magic stuff for a bit, and then did a tiny bit of work on my cancer book before I read some, and then did some food mate with mom before Ben joined me for chess over at Alley Cat, and I barely beat him queenless. I then did more food mate and pills, read some more, and did a bit of meditation before I finally slept. Upon waking, I did more work on my cancer stuff. I did Funime, then I drove with Katie and had a good conversation, did cancer paperwork, discovered just how far AI had come since the last checkup on it, and honestly had something of an identity crisis. And I know I'm not, like, the only one that's like, oh, shoot, when it comes to AI, but honestly, it's been hitting me very hard. To do a bit of time skipping, while I was in Georgia, I played around GPT-5, the best AI at the time, and it was crazy. Like, I spent 4 hours trying to get to write a paper that captured some of my cutting-edge philosophical ideas from my notes, so I could submit it to a peer-reviewed journal, and it couldn't quite do that, but it was very close. Like, it was spot on with what the historical philosophers said, and really good at summarizing their ideas. So, like, sure, maybe I won't be replaced yet, but I'm already at the point where certain parts of my life are definitely becoming pointless. And you must understand, I've spent a significant amount of work memorizing through philosophy. Like, we're talking what I did at work every day for 2 years. And it's now the manifestly obvious point that that information is irrelevant in any real-life context. And if that weren't enough, AI has become better at recalling that irrelevant information than me. Like, what's the point of memorizing all those philosophers and what they believed? Like, generally, there now exists a tool that can not only more accurately do so, but is also more efficient than me at regaling you with the disheartening knowledge of philosophers. So, anyway, it feels like that part of my life was just straight wasted, because it was. And I'm like, sure, okay, maybe AI can't do everything I do, but the better it gets at reasoning, then, like, where am I going to be in 5 years? Like, it can condense mass amounts of information better than I can. And, like, I can do that decently well. So, like, what happens when it gets better at explaining than me? And, like, better at reasoning than me? And all that jazz. So, anyway. The analogy that keeps coming to mind is like, I feel like I'm this master swordsman. Like, I've spent like years honing my craft. I'm straight up better than the vast majority of swordsmen around me. But now the gun just got invented. And sure, right now they're like those reloadable musket guns, you know, they're just like slow and accurate and take ages to load and all that jazz. And so my skill set is not completely irrelevant because like I can still kill people. But like as soon as they get to AKs, I'm cooked. Like at the rate AI is progressing, it really doesn't seem that likely to get to that point, especially within like a year or 3. And granted, I do have much bigger problems to worry about. Like, who cares if, you know, my skill set is, like, not competitive in 5 years because I have to get to 5 years. And in some way, that SE reality check does help me. But also, my NI wants to take back over. It's like, you know, I'm some weird new type that has the stack NI, no, not NI, TESI, TESE NIFI. And NI just keeps trying to, like, get back in the game. My SE keeps being like, shut up, you don't matter right now. Guys, I'm tired of SE. Like, I want to dream. I want to make long-term plans. I want to min-max for the future. But unfortunately, it would seem that the only way my NI is going to get airtime is through AI existential crises. So huzzah. Love that for me. Anyway, all that to say, AI made me feel like I'm going to be irrelevant, and that made me feel that way because it was true. And I would rather not feel that way. But, you know, I can't fix that because it's true. Hence, I'm whining about it. And yes, I recognize whining probably won't help me feel better in the long term, but it does make me feel better right now. Therefore, SE. Okay, where was I? Yes. A life of mediocrity and trivial, insignificant details. Excellent. Let's continue, shall we? As the AI crisis came upon me, I tried to talk to about Mom and Ben. Both of them were, like, not very sympathetic. Neither of them understands how it feels to have your, you know, role person merger identity just decompose before your eyes. The FE types all have person-person merger problems, so, oh well. However, I got a cheap and good burger out of the deal, so I'm not complaining. After that, since I was still feeling down, I tried to hit up Katie and talk about it, and it was good, but still not quite successful. A bit better. I felt like she got it more, but still doesn't feel it like how a TE Dom feels it. The conversation ended when M arrived, and the 3 of us went on a drive, and it actually happened to be a very good FI talk drive. Bleh. Oddly enough, though, that actually snapped me out of my NI problem, so turned out to be a very effective solution. So yeah, that talk was excellent, and we went until about 1 in the morning, and as soon as it ended, I went to sleep. The next morning began with me doing cancer book work, and then Foodame, and then pills, and then some great spikeball games with the Kiwis and Benj, Becky just watched. And that was a big fun with pretty similar results to last time, though I would say Benj and I did a bit better. After that, I did Monday Night Magic, ended up going on a very long walk with Jake, and then ended the night with some Foodame and sleeping. Now, for the final great trip of this season, my trip to Georgia, the country, mind you. I always had to specify, as it would seem. Okay, let me give you the context for this trip. First, as for why. The Republic of Georgia kind of has a prominent place within my history's family. My family's history. Grandpa and Grandma ran a school there for ages, Mom and Dad lived there for quite a few years in their young adult life, etc. As far as SI-relevant things go, it's kind of like chief among them. Hence, for ages, Mom, and also Dad too, but in a less SI way, has been wanting to take us kids to experience the place. Grace has gone twice before now and loved it, and Ben and I were both like, I'll pass, up until now. However, given the camp situation and Grace potentially moving permanently to New Zealand, Mom was especially like, well, if we're going to do it, we got to do it now. Hence, they booked tickets and offered to pay for us kids to come. And see, the original booking of tickets at that time, I was actually not going to go. And the reason for that being because I do not enjoy family trips. And there's a lot of factors that play into that. The first is that there's a conditioned hyperpassivity within myself. For most of my childhood, my family just traveled often and also radically, and I just kind of like learned to survive. I just had to like yeet all my wants and needs and become hyperpassive. Hence, whenever I do a family trip, I naturally tend toward that conditioned response. Second, my TE absolutely dies on all family trips. Mom and Dad are just not efficient. I mean, they're okay, right? But they're just not good, at least by my standards of good. Hence, there are always numerous times where I'm thinking, if I were in charge, this would go so much better. And hence, the lack of TE control and competence kills me. Third, my entire life is composed of, not my entire life, my entire family is composed monolithically of feeling perceivers, while I, on the other hand, am a thinking judger. Hence, the sorts of things my family likes to do and what I like to do are very different activities. I like to do stuff, and they, on the other hand, like to see stuff. And like, I don't care about seeing things. Could not care less, with some exceptions. And yeah, that's like all we do on family trips. We go to a location, walk around, then go to a new location. No activities, no experiences, just a lot of looking. So yeah, for all 3 of those reasons, and probably more, those are just big ones, I have discovered I tend to die on family trips. Hence, when I thought about what it would be like to be staying with the family for that long, I was like, I would rather stay home. But as the week wore on from that original decision, I thought about it more, and I realized this may be my last chance to spend significant time with my family altogether. Maybe ever. Plus, clearly this mattered a lot to my mom and dad, and who was I to turn down a fully sponsored trip with unique experiences? So, eventually, I reneged on my decision and let my parents know that I did indeed want to come. And while a lot of the trip did suck and went predictably as bad as I thought it would, there were a lot of moments that also surprised me, and I actually really enjoyed. So overall, I don't regret my decision. That said, here we go. The saga of my trip to Georgia. It began with me getting a really good night's sleep because our flight did not leave till later. Me finishing packing, having breakfast, and then Aunt Becky came and picks us up. Mom, Ben, and I, that is. Dad and Grace were already in Georgia to take us to the airport. And then there was small talk. It was cringe. I survived. We then arrived at the airport, honestly a bit too early, but that was all good. We got our food, stalled, and then Ben and I watched people and sorted music. We then got on our plane. I learned a lot of personality stuff via podcasts, watched The Goonies, and low-key kind of hated it, and then sorted music for 10 hours. I then got sleep in this napping place at the airport in Munich, courtesy of Mom and Dad's kindness, knowing how much sleep deprivation sucks for me. And then I went on just like stalling for 3 hours until our plane left. While I was sleeping and just waiting, Mom and Ben explored Germany briefly. From there, it was just another 4 hours till Tbilisi, and I was pretty tired at this point. But I remember listening to podcasts and also just kind of like pseudo-sleeping. And then once we got there, my dad met us like 4 in the morning in Georgia time. And the first thing that struck me about Georgia was that even though it was like the middle of the night, it was so hot. Like, not unbearably hot, but definitely very uncomfortably hot. And I was like, if this is how it is in the middle of the night, we're screwed. And yes, we were. But more on that later. Anyway, Dad speaks proficient Georgian, good enough that people are always surprised he doesn't actually a Georgian. So he grabbed us a taxi and took us to our first Airbnb. And the place was jank. You must understand, every building in Tbilisi is like this same mega unique, mega old, mega dilapidated World War II outpost. Like going up the stairs to our apartment felt like I was in a horror film. But the place inside wasn't bad. I got to take a shower and then I crashed. And yeah, here's a picture of that first place. Well, the view from it. After sleeping for like, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 hours, I was still tired, but I was functional. Georgia is a literal 12-hour time zone difference from Fort Collins, so the jet lag is about as nasty as it could be. After stalling for a bit in the morning and eating some really good bread, Georgians basically live off bread and cheese, so they're actually really good at making bread. Plus, due to the currency difference, it was also ridiculously cheap. Like, we're talking like 33 cents for like a 2-foot loaf of bread. We, Mom, Dad, Ben, and I, then wanted the city in classic treat family vacation form. Mom and Dad took us to a place that they came right when they first came to Tbilisi all those years ago, and it was a lot less jank now. I mean, they were there right after the Iron Curtain dropped, and there were gangs and such, so that's to be expected. But it was still jank. They bought us this Italian soda-like drink, and it was pretty good. From there, we just walked around looking at the city for a bit. Here is a picture. And after a bit, we then met up with Bo, Katya, Grace, and Taylor at the Georgia market. Ah, right, Taylor, because Grace's boyfriend joined us for the trip. Forgot to mention that, but, well, he's a great addition, so he was there. Huzzah. So, yeah, we met up with them. It was way too hot, but otherwise, the Georgia market was cool. From there, we got some traditional Georgian food, only for me to discover it had cilantro. That stuff tastes nasty to me. Unfortunately, I have that gene that turns it into, like, horrible soap tastes, and it's very mega strong. Also, unfortunately, Georgians put cilantro in literally everything, so that put a significant damper on my experience of food in that country, because most of their food tasted like soap. But they were good drinks, and I'll give them that. Georgians make this, like, stuff they call compote, which is basically just, they call it lemonade. Like, if it were going to translate, it'd be lemonade, but it's not lemonade. Anyway, it's nothing like lemonade, but it's really good, so I got that often. Anywho, ate, got back to the house, and the beautiful air conditioning. Mom and Dad made a point that all of our places would have air conditioning, and thank the Lord they did, because I actually don't know how I would have slept otherwise. It was so hot. We then played some Dutch Blitz. I somehow end up counseling Bo and Katya through some relationship struggle. Genuinely don't know how that came about. When we were like playing cards, the next minute I'm helping the ISFP and the INFJ understand each other. But oh well, it was good. And then Uncle David and Haga came over, and so did some woman that Dad knows and her daughter, and we all ate together. And then we all journeyed to this hilltop theme park, which we took a gondola to. The gondola had a very cool staircase, which I will show you. Picture of staircase. Once we got out there, Taylor, Grace, Bo, and I all rode the roller coaster once. 'Twas okay. Then we went to the Ferris wheel, and the weird thing that happened was that our Georgian native girl who was leading us tried to cut obviously in line and got called on it. But then the whack thing is she proceeded to get mad at the people who called her for being snitches. And, like, she didn't think she did anything wrong. And it just kind of made me realize how, like, some unspoken rules are just, like, law to us. Like, it's ingrained. And this happened in other places, too. Like, I'd be waiting in line, and George would just cut in front of me. And, like, I don't know, it just seemed kind of unthinkable to me. Like, it's just like a pseudo-norm that you just wait in line. But I guess that's just how they are. They also have, like, different prices for tourists and locals, aka they can upcharge us with money. So the people who can tell what the normal prices don't get charged extra. So that was also kind of crazy to me. And also very vexing, because we were on the losing side of those arrangements during our whole trip. But anyway, just different culture. So just some weird things for culture shock. Regardless, we eventually got up to the top of the gondola, and the view of the city from the Ferris wheel was beautiful. There's a picture. It's a really big city, honestly. Like 3.5 million people or something. Big, large. And also, I need to show you the metros, because they're so deep. They're crazy. Like, do you see how deep that is? Like, you can't even tell. But they're super steep. And yeah, it was a very whack experience going that deep underground. But regardless, still sleep deprived from the time shift, so I went straight to bed once we got home. The next morning, I slept in. I then got breakfast with mom at this fancy place, and since you get like 3 times the value for the American dollar to the Georgian dollar, or the Georgian lorry, is it called? We got to eat these really nice places, and it was about the cost of going to Wendy's. So that was a pretty dope part of the whole experience, not gonna lie. Also, like, the food is pretty high quality for cheap. While we were there, mom got this candid picture of me, which I genuinely do not remember making that face, but whatever. I apparently did. After fancy breakfast, I then chilled at home for a bit and got stuff done for my upcoming CSU semester, since my oncologist finally got back to me my chemo schedule, and thus I was able to get my classes signed up for. We then played some Dutch Blitz before then going out and walking the city for a stinking 6 hours. Ugh. It was death. Not only because it was so hot, but like, there was actually no point. I tried to be all zen about it, and I think I actually largely succeeded. But by the end, my dislike was definitely starting to show. Still, I survived, thanks in good part to headphones and good music. Then we bestow upon you the pictures from the walk. Picture. There you go, the product of 6 hours of walking in killer heat. Pictures. I hope you're happy, as I was not. Once we got back, I was just done and I went to bed. The next morning, we left Tbilisi in the rental car the dad picked up. I saw this super cool old Orthodox church, and we just kind of chilled at that place for now. Pictures. We then stopped at a coffee shop, which is in the first picture, and then walked around a bit before finding this super cool restaurant. That was probably my favorite food of the whole trip. I just, like, loved it. Like, it just remembering it made my mouth water, just like right now. It's this Lebanese food with meat wrapped in grape leaves, and it's like, it has this sauce. Now my mouth's watering again. Genuinely so good. Boosted my mood for the rest of the day, because it made my SE very happy. We then met up with Bo and his family, and we walked around with them some before then returning to Uncle David and Hinka's house. And Hinka then proceeded to really awkwardly pray for me. Her face was squished right up against mine, and I was kind of dying inside. And then we just continued on. The drive was chill. I honestly kind of enjoyed most of the driving time we did because I felt like I wasn't wasting my time because we were at least going somewhere intentionally. And I also got to do my own thing to some extent, so driving was always like a nice reprieve. We then got to this pseudo mountain town, which I honestly can't remember the name of, but here's some pictures. Our Airbnb was okay, but nothing special. We then walked around the town the first evening, and that was pretty boring, honestly. Nothing notable. The next day, however, was the first day I got to stay home if I wanted to, and I 100% took the opportunity. I spent like 12 hours, or something like that, just working on my cancer book and watching anime, and just alternating back between the two, and it was so refreshing. Like, actually recharged me so much. The evening rolled around, and then I joined the family for a decent meal, and then we walked around the Central Park, and again, like, it was an okay time, but nothing to write home about. The next day, though, that's when the trip really started getting more interesting. We had one heck of a drive, and we went through these really cool, dilapidated rural towns. And then we arrived at this Airbnb that was nice, but I swear our water was cursed. Like, it was gray. Like, it may have been what caused the plague. I don't know. People got some stomach issues, actually, after drinking that. I, of course, seeing the state of water, did not drink the water. Other people were like, it's fine. I'm like, no, it's not fine. Anyway, we went into town. It's hard to call it such, though, because it was really tiny. So, whatever. And we went to this one restaurant that took like 2 hours to serve us. It was ridiculously long. I mean, notably, every place in Georgia took like super long to serve us, but that was exceptionally bad. And in the meantime, we all went swimming, which was fun. Well, Taylor, Dad, and I did. Grace and Ben watched. And eventually the food did arrive, and then we ate it. We then took we were then going to go on this canyon walk, but Grace was not having a good day, so we went home instead. That night, we played a bit of Dutch Blitz, and then I went to sleep. The next day, I woke up the next day we woke up and then went on the way to our next place. And that's when I actually started having fun. Because the next drive was quite long, but it was in the very high mountains, and the views, chef's kiss. Actually glorious. Let me show you pictures. Beauty. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. Like, do you see that? And then it got even better. We took like this hour-long detour to this meadow place, and oh my gosh, probably the best view I've ever seen in my life. And these pictures don't do justice, but I'm going to show you pictures anyway. They were just amazing. Genuinely, this whole field was like covered in clover grass, and there were like this tiny little Orthodox church, and genuinely just the prettiest place I've ever seen. I took off my shoes and properly frolicked, in a manly way, mind you. And honestly, it was so beautiful. After spending like 30 minutes there, we all hung onto the car, because we had an SUV with those like roof things to hang on. And Dad drove us further into the valley, which like took us to this cool coffee shop, so that was pretty too. Check out these pictures. And yeah, we hung in there for a bit. I listened to some songs, then we drove back, once again hanging onto the car, and that was actually way more fun than it should have been. Eventually, we had seen all the pretty sights and were satisfied, and we all piled in and drove to the actual town we're staying at. But before I get to that part, isn't it kind of tragic that here I am amidst the most stunning and beautiful place I've ever been in my 24 years of life, and I'm bored after 2 hours? Like, that's just kind of tragic. I just wanted to say that, you know? Like, this is literally the place Grace conjures in her mind when she thinks of heaven, and I can see why. And after 2 hours, I'm like, I'm satisfied. You know, we humans kind of suck. Just saying. Anyway, with that deplorable note about human nature rendered, I should press on. It was like an hour more of driving before we reached the city we were staying at, and we gave this and it gave off proper mountain town vibes, as well as like 12th century I'll kill you vibes. See, they have these really old towers called kushkis, at least that's how it's pronounced, and they're everywhere, and honestly really cool. Let me show you some pictures. Tower. Those were definitely the most unique parts of the town. One of the families had one that they'd passed down for like literally 1,000 years, and they let people tour it to make some money, and it was probably the most sketchy tour I've ever been in, but very cool. Definitely very crude architecture, but you know, if it lasts a millennia, I can't really rag on it. So yeah, we were staying, and here's a picture of that. And then we crashed. Ben and I stayed home and recharged while Mom, Dad, Grace, Taylor went out and bought burgers, which took an age because all food takes ages. And then once they got back, we ate, played some games of Dutch Blitz, and then all went to sleep. And I slept so-so because I shared a bed with Taylor. The next morning, I got up to see this, which is both mountains and Taylor and Grace just all cuddly, which was a pretty view and also mildly adorable and mildly cringe. Taylor and Grace have a lot of moments like that during the trip, and I'm happy for her. And then we had a really good breakfast at this local place with a dude who spoke to us, actually spoke really good English. He sounded basically American. And after that, we went to a boring coffee shop because Ben's only way to recharge is through coffee shops it was seen. And I just listened to podcasts and learned things during that time. The next thing we did was actually great, though. See, there was these gondolas up the mountain. And on the top of this mountain, there's this really cool coffee shop. And once again, the views were, like, spectacular. And then there's this meadow up there with literal wild horses. Like, what the heck? Let me show you pictures. Oh, so pretty. My gosh, I missed that place. Gosh, it was gorgeous. I like, my tertiary SE is actually such a sucker for breathtaking views. Like, if this is how you feelers perceive staring at normal, boring stuff, then I guess I see why all you want to do is walk around, because with views like that, I could do it for literally ages, especially with a really good song. When we were up there, Ben and I played a game of Cleanless Chess, which was fun. There was a very talkative British woman that I left Mom and Dad to deal with and just stared wistfully out the window at the 316 Mountains of Epicness. And yeah, after being up there for an age, we then went back down, got food, and had a detestable walk around the city, of which here's a picture. And then I decided I wanted to walk home from where we were, because it just seemed fun, and then Taylor and Ben joined me, and that was a good walk back. On the way, we ran into like a jailbreak set of super goggles, which were actually quite impressive, and you know, they zoomed in very well, so that was actually very fun. And then we picked up a ride from the parents as they were driving back, and we got home. From there, we just rounded out the night with some Dutch Blitz, and that was it. The next morning, we left the glorious town in pursuit of our next destination. Also, tangent, but something you knew about Georgia is that there are a lot of cows everywhere. So many cows. So anyway, on the way down, we stopped this mega jank coffee shop where Dad was talking with this old native woman, and she was talking it, and Dad and I gathered, like, from the gestures that she was talking about Mom in some way. Then the woman stopped for a moment, made a very illustrative gesture, and then continued on. But of course, Dad decided it was appropriate to translate that part, and only that part of their conversation, and just said, "She says Mom has good breasts." And of course, at this, all of us just broke down laughing. And like, we were trying to hide it because it was clearly old woman, clearly meant it as a genuine compliment. And we didn't want to be rude, but it was actually just hilarious. To all my guy friends out there, if you ever get married, just know the compliment I'm giving your wife in my wedding speech is just that right there. Actually, I'm pretty sure that would be very awkward for everyone. So perhaps I should not do this. You know what? Yeah, actually, never mind. William, please still invite me to your wedding. Anyway, the coffee shop from that place was genuinely awful. The coffee from that place was genuinely awful. We were overcharged, and also Dad didn't even like the small talk, so it was overall a huge fail, but a memorable one. It took a while, but eventually we got to our next destination called Batumi. The Airbnb was pretty nice, plus we got our own beds, Taylor having the couch, so that was very great. The best part, though, is that when we got there, we finally got our freedom. See, since the city is a city, everything is within walking distance, and my parents actually counted on us doing our own thing. So if this was part of the trip, they like planned in that we could do our own thing, and that was really nice. The first night I went out and saw the city for a bit, of which here are some pictures, which you cannot see, which is tragic because it's pretty. It was honestly a pretty cool city. I then went and attempted to order McDonald's, but the McDonald's was like, one, probably the busiest McDonald's I've ever been at, and two, obviously I couldn't speak the language, so that didn't help. They got my order wrong, and I suspected on purpose, and then after ordering a second time, but this time not in person, since they couldn't see I looked Russian. They had a really big thing against Russians. I then got the right thing, but the whole process took like 45 minutes, and it was stressful, so I just walked back to the apartment and unwinded with some anime. Then, once everyone got back, I recharged, and I went out with the not parents, members of the trip, and we revisited McDonald's, got more food, and talked till 1 in the morning, and it was a pretty good conversation. The next day, I went into the city and had breakfast with everyone, but after that, I stayed in this apartment where there was air conditioning and worked on cancer stuff, as well as watched anime. Then when evening rolled around, I joined the fam for dinner at this fancy place, which was still pretty cheap, all things considered, and we played Dutch Blitz into the night. We kept an ongoing tally of all our games, and although Taylor almost surpassed me right at the end of the trip, I nevertheless did have the highest score overall of all the Dutch Blitz games. Just have to point that out, you know. The next morning, Mom made us breakfast, and as we were eating it, I had this massive brain probability theory thought, which most of you wouldn't get. Trust me, I tried explaining it multiple times, and for some reason, it's not grasped. Though Joe and Noah have actually got it, so bless their big brains. Hence, I won't share it here, but needless to say, it was pretty darn great, and I think it's a very influential thought, especially for anyone who thinks that they use Bayes' theorem correctly. So yeah, I then spent the next 30 minutes trying to explain it to Grace and Taylor because I was excited about it, and they got a little tiny bit of it, but mostly not. They didn't get it, but they tried. And it was at this point that we discovered that Batumi had a giant chessboard, and I was like, woo, chess! So that was loads of fun. I played Taylor for a few games, and then I talked with, I played Taylor. No, then Taylor and Grace and I rented scooters to this legendary fancy McDonald's, which wasn't in fact very fancy. However, we didn't get to buy anything because we had a time crunch, and we needed to get back to meet this Georgian girl that Mom and Dad knew, and apparently wanted to speak English with us. However, even though we rushed together on time, making it 3 minutes early, might I add, the girl was 30 minutes late, so that sucked. Yeah, we then walked around doing nothing. The Treat family tradition, might I remind you. And basically, I didn't talk to her. And it was then that I was like, I want to play giant chess. So Ben, Taylor, Grace, and I all went and played giant chess. But then, as Ben and Taylor were setting up to play me in hand-brain chess, Dad found this old dude, and so I played chess against him instead. There's a picture of us. And it was actually pretty good. It was a hard-fought game, but I did win in the end. After that game, Ben had checked out from chess. I think that he and Taylor played each other and, had a game. And so it was just like, I'm done. But Taylor was down for a game regardless. So I played him queenless and I won. There were also some onlookers and some Russian guy who really wanted to play. So after I won, I challenged them while Taylor and Grace went to go do their own thing. But unfortunately, the game sucked because he was bad. At the start, I offered to play him without my queen, and he was like, "We shall see," in all Russian. That was sounded Chinese. That was not Russian at all. But then after I destroyed him, he frowned and was like, "Next time I will play you without queen," or something like that. He clearly did not like being beat so soundly, but he was a good sport about it. From there, I grabbed pizza with Mom and Dad and delivered it to the rest of the family. And we played Dutch Blitz on McDonald's tables in the square until 1 in the morning, and that was actually quite a bit of fun. The next morning, I spent doing cancer work, watching some anime, and then doing more cancer work, and then I joined people for ice cream, got some McDonald's, and then did more cancer work before the evening rolled around and we all gathered for one last fancy restaurant. It was, I was actually sick of eating Georgian food at this point, so I just ordered sushi. And don't fault me, I'd eaten a lot of Georgian food, okay? But, as always, the food took ages, and so Mom and Dad held our table while the rest of us went to Rocky Beach and stared at the sunset, and that was cool. Ben talked about some stuff he was thinking through, and I got to plug in, and I appreciated him asking for my input. And yeah, just as the sun set, we got called back. The food was good, but the sushi wasn't very filling, so I got pizza afterwards, watched a bit of anime, and then we played some Dutch Blitz and slept. We had to get up early next day, so I only got 4 hours of sleep. It was one of those classic, I need to sleep insomnias where, I really need to figure out how to handle that, because that just sucks. As we drove to Tbilisi, I then finally finished listening to all of Taylor's 38-hour long music playlists, and I got a lot of good songs from it, actually. And unfortunately, I started feeling really bad. At this point, my cancer had picked up like crazy, and I was starting to become concerned because my left arm was hurting, and depending on how I positioned it, was losing blood flow, and that didn't make me feel good. And also, the cancer in my neck was growing very rapidly. So, I was starting to I was trying to just ignore it for most of the trip, but that started to really bug me. Anyway, aside from my deteriorating psychological state, the last Airbnb though was really cool. It had this loft bedroom with this plank pathway. No way that design would pass any sort of safety standards here in the States. But I thought it was super cool, so I slept up there. And there's some pictures. We also had a pool table built into the kitchen table, so that was also very fun. I played Taylor, and I lost 2-3, which was super sad. However, since I felt so bad, the photo shoot Mom had planned was just the worst. She wanted to do one last photo shoot prior to Grace leaving and me being all chemoed. And, good idea, but, I was feeling like death. So, yeah, it was just rough. I think being forced to look genuinely happy when you feel anything but is a low-key form of torture. Also, I just hate getting my picture taken in general. So, yeah. Anyway, here's a picture from that session. But, with pain, we made it through. And here is Grace at a coffee shop with Kat. And yeah, I got home, crashed, and went to sleep early. The final day, I spent basically all in the Airbnb because I was feeling pretty done. I got pretty good sleep through that, so that was a boon. But yeah, basically my day was spent originally working on my cancer book, but then I got sucked into the world of GPT-5, after which I tried to get it to write a stinkingly long philosophical paper, and it did not work. So I just messed around for hours. That thing is crazy, though, as aforementioned. Everyone then came back, and we played one last session of Dust Blitz before Taylor flew out. Once people got back from taking to the airport, we had a brief recap of our favorite parts of the trip, and that was good. Here's the final pick of us all. With that, we all went to bed. I only got 1 hour, a literal single hour of sleep before the shenanigans next morning, so that sucked. The first shenanigan of which being we left for the airport a literal hour and a half before our flight departed. And that was very majorly stressing me out because I was like, the drive is 30 minutes. But it turns out Dad was actually right, and he left at a reasonable time, contrary to my belief, because the Tbilisi airport is tiny, and so you can clear security and get to your gate in like 30 minutes. So we had like 30 minutes leeway. So the stressful drive would have been unnecessary, except when we got there, Grace looked at us and she was like, I don't have my passport. So after like 15 minutes of bag digging, Dad and her rushed back to the apartment while Ben, Mom, and I went through security in hopes that the flight might magically be delayed, which it was. Actually crazy. Like some province or what? So Grace then rushed back. The taxi guy like majorly sped for them and got to the flight like 10 minutes before it left. And yeah, that was super stressful. I mean, like I wasn't super stressed, but you know, I was gonna go home either way. But still, I would rather my sister not be left in Georgia. Also, yes, the fiasco aside, we made it through. I sorted through more music, read some comics. Comics were saving my life that whole trip. And then I got to Munich. I slept in the nap pod and killed some time. We hopped on our second flight back to Denver. And then I spent the first half of 10 hours watching a show called Silo, because Bo gave it a literal 10 out of 10. And it was not worthy of a 10 out of 10. It was like a 7 at best. Hence, having given that enough of a shot to determine it was kind of meh, I then pivoted to catching up on movies that were bad, but somewhat culturally relevant. Once we finally touched back down, I was tired and really had to be home. The Macy's picked us up and gave us grapes, which were so good after only eating Georgian food. I literally don't think I ate a single fruit that entire time. And then I just crashed as soon as I got home. So yeah, overall, especially now writing about it, it was really good to be home. And it was also, I'm glad I went. Like, it was definitely worth it, but it was very good to be home. Super memorable experience. As for the life that's happened after that point, I woke up on Sunday, and I happened to wake up in time for church, so I was like, well, gotta go. And so I did. And for some reason, coming back after being gone from ages always feels very daunting. Like, all the FE stuff feels like a lot of work. Hence, you know, when I think about it, I'm like, oh. But then when I actually get there, I always realize that there's really nothing to dread. And it always, you know, feels dreadworthy just looking at a distance, but the distance is an illusion. So yes, I went to church. It was really good to see everyone. I genuinely missed them. I went on a drive with Jake, Karina, and Joe during the service instead of a walk, because, lol, I miss driving my car. And we kind of just, like, split off into two conversations, Joe and I, and then Jake and Karina, and that was good. Once we got back, I did some socializing at lunch bunch. I played a tiny bit of Magic with Joe, and then I launched into explaining my cool big brain probability thoughts to both him and Noah, as well as some ontological quantum physics. That was a lot of fun. I missed doing that. Once that ended, I had a really hard conversation with Johanna, but it did help our relationship quite a bit, so that was good. I also caught up on her life at the tail end of that, and then I went directly from there to hang out with Katie, Em, and Grace, where they were deciding to mix it up, and we went bowling instead of other things, because we're all bad at bowling. And yeah, as that was winding down, I was dead tired because jet lag. So yeah, that was basically the end of the day. The next day, I unpacked, did all the things I previously put off doing, including pills and such. I then felt sick, which was lovely. After that, I hung out with Katie, Em, and Grace, and did absolutely nothing of interest. I then played Frisbee, which was fun, but I was very out of shape, and also my arm was really hurting from cancer, so that also sucked. At the end of that, Nessa and I summoned the others to play pickleball, and I learned how to play pickleball for the first time. It was a good game, very tennis-like. Also, I'm pretty good playing for the first time, so of course that adds the fun. Duncan, if you remember him from hiking way back, joined in, as well as Sam, and yeah, we got quite a few games in. Oh, also Joe and Karina were there. And Benj. Benj is probably a given. I don't know, maybe Benj isn't a given. Anyway, once I edited, I got home, did pills and fume, watched some stuff with the Grace gang, and then Grace dumped taking everyone home on me, so I did that. Well, she called Taylor, and I was like, okay, fine. And so I drove Katie and Em to the respective boats late at night. The next morning, I started off the day with pills and anime. I then went to my doctor's appointment, where he was like, blah, 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 I'm a doctor, and here's the things you already know. I'm so authoritative and intelligent. Look at my cool stethoscope I literally never use. This is how doctors sound in my inner world. And then I played racquetball with Benj and did decently, but of course he still won. From there I did Funame pills, and Grace and I went on a sunset drive. I went on a lengthy rollerblade walk, and then I talked with Jake as I went on that walk, and that was very good. And then I journaled, and I slept. The next day began with Funame. Grace and I tried to do this cool winter water lantern thing for Em's last day before she left, but because she's leaving for college. But the cave was super full of water. But this was not bad for later reasons. Katie then came over and hung out early to help us brainstorm. We did Funme, picked up Verns, and then grabbed M and did a final Dutch Bros run and drove through the canyon, during which Grace's butt crunched the coffee cups in the middle seat cup holder, which she sat on. And yeah, that was unfortunate. And thus coffee spilled everywhere. And I chastised myself for not having anything remotely like a paper towel in my car to clean up with. However, we did the best we could, and when it was done, the SI inferior users, although very vexed by their stickiness, did push through, and we continued to the radio towers and briefly stared at the sky before getting bored and driving home. However, before we got home, and on the way, Em was like, I want to go swim in the reservoir. And of course, when she said that, I was like, aw, look at little Annie thought. Let's watch it die its usual slow and painful death as she realizes that reality isn't what she dreamed. But then, miraculously, I was wrong. We actually did swim in the reservoir, and it was actually pretty warm, and also very dark. And it also wasn't much of a swim, but it was still memorable. Then we all sat on the rocks, and Katie was like totally ignored as she tried to say cool facts about rocks. And I was like, ha! Feel my pain! This is how I feel every time I open my mouth about almost anything philosophy. And as you may guess from that exposition, I exhibited zero sympathy for her plight. The girls then tried to enjoy the moment SE style, failed, and then we left. But for what it's worth, I enjoyed the moment. It was a nice night. Once we got home, we watched A Silent Voice. We've been saving that because, it's a very emotional movie, and that movie is still so good. Then Katie was FI, and both me and Grace sucked at being FI, and then we all said goodbye poorly, except for Katie. She did decent. The next day, the tumors were really starting to get painful. My chest hurt when I breathed too deeply, and my arm was in constant pain. And all that said, I was like, well, I gotta make it to chemo, and nothing I can do till then. So I just tried to ignore that. I spent the morning at Little Bird with Grace and Katie. I took my pills without food in that morning, and things were very weird because apparently taking a bunch of B vitamins without food makes my face get super red. We talked there for a bit, and that was a decent time. Once I got home, I took more pills and watched some anime. I then proceeded to work on M's goodbye letter, as we all wrote her one. And I had to tap in my FI, and that was hard, but I did. And yeah, I think I did it successfully, I might add. After that, we did small things. I talked with Katie for a bit, and then I attended Thursday Night Magic. Did pills one last time, and then went to sleep. The next day was pills, cancer book, when I did work. Food and racquetball, some time wastage, pills again while watching Arcane with Mom, consuming Grace's and Katie's big good scones, and then seeing Emerson one last time, a brief drive, and then some for real saying goodbye. And that was it. Emerson was gone. I began the next day with pills and food. I called Jordan spontaneously and briefly, and we talked for a little bit until Jake got there. And then we had some really good talks with me and Jake. Also, he and Grace ended up talking to each other, so that was kind of fun. I let them yap and just had them, do their thing. And then, air mattress. See, this is actually great and probably the highlight of the week or month or however long. See, before, how before I said Grace and I went up to the cave to see if it was full of water, and the cave wasn't technically a cave. It's actually a tunnel. It's actually a really long tunnel. Hence, when I was is it full of water? I was also kind of thinking, maybe it is full of water. And so we could go in it on a mattress. So I was like, what if we got an air mattress and floated down the tunnel? And of course, that sounded like the best thing ever. But I didn't want to do it alone. So who to hop on a twin-size mattress and float down an unknown river with me other than the person I've cuddled with for money? That's right, the great and glorious Benj. And yeah, we were actually both giddy about the idea. I looked at the route on Google Maps, and I had no idea where it was going. So I knew where the cave went in, but I didn't know where it let out. So we were just kind of going blind. Plus, I didn't know the river or creek, so that just made more fun. We were just well, let's wing it. And we just hopped on a mattress and started floating. The first part was quite uneventful. We kind of were in a more civilized area, and the waterways were much more concrete and refined. And it was very slow, but it was good. I have no pictures of the journey because we're just, living it. But I will dump the 2 that Benj got here. Picture. So yeah, that's the vibe. Not a massive body of water by any means, but it's still pretty decently sized at points. And yeah, we just start coasting down. There's some cool tunnels, overpasses, and then there's these wild apple trees. That part was actually great. There were apple trees that just hung out over the water, and you could just reach up, pick an apple as you were going by, and they were really good too. And that happened 3 different points in the journey. Actually peak. Anyway, I distracted myself. The first part was very chill, but when we got to the quote-unquote cave, see, it's a tunnel. I just have to clarify that's a mile-long tunnel, but it feels like a cave. We were going through the cave for solid 10 minutes. It was really narrow, so that was a trippy experience. And the first part we did in total darkness, but we were looking up ahead at the tiny light at the end of the tunnel, and I was like, is something across that light? And as it kept getting closer, I was like, oh yeah, there's definitely a branch or something. And then I didn't bring my phone, so I was like, hey Benj, we're gonna need your light. And Ben starts fumbling for his phone, trying to get it out. And 30 seconds later, my voice is a little bit more high pitched. Benj? And then 30 seconds later, he's trying to turn on the flashlight, and the massive branch is right there, and I'm like, Benj! and yeah, anyway, it's not like the branch was dangerous inherently, but you see, we're on an air mattress, so if that got popped halfway through, that means we're swimming/walking the rest of the way. Hence, the stakes were indeed quite high. And you have to understand, there were a number of times we sacrificed our body for mattress integrity, and it was actually kind of comical. You should see this thing, the tangle of sticks, chock full of spiders. There'd be a tangle of sticks, just chock full of spiders, and you'd just be slowly approaching it, and they're 10 spiders just sitting there, waiting, looking at you. And at that point, you just knew it had to be done. You're just you know what? Embrace the spiders. The number of spiders on my back and neck and legs has never been higher. I actually think it has never been higher. There were so many spiders. Shivers. Anyway, so yeah, we sacrificed our bodies to the mattress, made it past the stick blockages in the cave, and pleasantly found out the cave did not put us out to a waterfall, a genuine possibility. Look at the satellite imagery and the dam nearby, but instead to some waterway I didn't even see on the map. So when we got out, Benj and I were YOLO, baby, and we didn't really have another choice, so we just kept floating down. The next part was really cool. We made it pretty close to quite a few mansions and some really cool scenery, as well as some epic rock formations and pretty views. And yeah, it was pretty smooth sailing for quite a while. After about 15 minutes to maybe half an hour, He then used his phone to figure out where we were going. It turned out the river that we didn't even know existed let us out right next to the river that I thought we were going to be going down. So that was really sweet. And we just got coasted on. But then, right at the end, there was this really cool canyon that rose up on both sides of us, and the water got like all rapidy before going around a bend. And originally, Benj and I were like, whoa, this is so cool. But as we got deep in the canyon, the rushing like started getting really loud. And I was like, we could probably go through it, right? And Benj was like, yeah, best be safe to just take a look just in case. So with a bit of difficulty, we got off our mattress, waded back up the way we came, and looked around the bend. And I kid you not, 15 feet past the bend was like a significant waterfall. Like the rapids got really fast, and then boom, falls. So like, had we gone around the bend and actually seen the waterfall, it probably would have been too late to bail. And it was crazy, because like the whole way there was nothing like this. Like it was all just super chill. But then right at the end, there's this section that's like designed to kill you. It's like sheer canyon walls, rapids, curve, bam, 30-foot waterfall. So yeah, it was crazy and super unexpected, and I suddenly became very grateful for Benj's caution. I bet you if I had been by myself, I would have assumed it was just rapids and totally would have just gone off that thing. So yeah, that was freaky, but lol, also really cool. And there you go, my harrowing mattress tale with Benj. That whole thing was actually so much fun. Once we got back to our respective cars, we both drove to my house and we chilled for a bit. And then we all watched Arcane, and I took pills. He then had to head out, which was a little bit sad. And then Grace and I went on a brief walk over to CSU before calling it a night. Sunday dawned, and with it church. The lunch bunch was chill, and at Joe's fervent request, I decided to attend magic at RJ's place, which was actually pretty fun. I then caught up with Nessa and went on a drive, which was the big good, before going to do some anime and some pills. And then I remember going to walk with Katie over to City Park, but... Oh, wait, I remember what we talked about. Yes, the walk part we didn't talk about much. But we then went on a drive afterward, and Katie was able to FI more. And that was a really valuable conversation, and how I ended the day. The next day, I started up work again, and man, I'm actually so blessed to have the receptionist job. Like, actually great. Genuinely, ISFJ boss, ideal. If you don't want to have to do work, take an ISFJ boss. Although, to be fair, the first day I did spend my first 5 hours working, or pseudo working. So, whatever. See, the one thing I've come to understand and rationalize is that small talk is part of my job. Like, it's literally essential to my continued employment, to hear my boss's FE woes. Hence, pseudo work. I deserve the praise for this discovery because my ESTJ coworker has very much not figured this out. And also, being a TE Dom is blatantly saying things that I keep inside my head. Like, why are we doing this task? This is pointless, and this is the worst way to do this. Why does it need to be pretty, etc.? But you see, what us TE Doms tend to forget is it doesn't matter what the best way to do a thing is. Our success condition isn't a task success. What matters is how we treat people and how they feel about us, at least for this line of work. And yes, the anathema of TE is true. Namely, success in a receptionist job is determined by FE. And I, as best I can, have come to accept this fact, and maybe, by chance, even enjoy it from time to time. Well, FE work is a lot easier than TE work, albeit infinitely more confusing. So yeah, I came into work, tried to help set up the other staff for success, and then started off the semester on the right foot. And yeah, it was just good to be back. Once I got home, my food made, and then I called with William, and I got to hear his download on generational theory, which I very much appreciated. I didn't think the theory was interesting enough to actually study it, but I also was too interested in it to ignore it. So having someone else read the book and then explain it to me was actually the perfect amount of work per interest. And then from there, it was just food made with Grace and slept. The next day, I had classes till 5. I somehow managed to enroll in a small talk class. Literally, the class was called Small Group Communication, and that was an experience. I am really bad when it comes to names, and that was very quickly punished by my ENFP professor. ENFP professors are scary. Very much energy. Very much tertiary TE. Ugh. The weird thing about actually being back on campus, though, was I was suddenly struck by how baby everyone is. Like, it's whack, but everyone suddenly seemed so young. I was, looking at a bunch of teenagers, and all of a sudden, they were children. And, that perspective shift was really weird, because I didn't feel that way, the last semester. And, I have at least 5 people in my life at, the same age as those college students. I don't see them that way. It just seems like they're normal, full-grown adults to me. So, yeah, I guess I just shifted for that for some reason. All the college kids seem like babies. And also, everyone is ugly. Guys, girls, especially the guy girls, all ugly. I started paying attention to demographic attractiveness when I started traveling. Also, Germans, I rate as generally more attractive than Georgians. And I thought maybe everyone just seemed ugly because I was overseas and I have a cultural bias, but no. People just seem ugly here, too. I think I'm just surrounded by a lot of disproportionately attractive people, so my standards have gone up. You all have screwed me over. Once I got through my classes, I got back home, I watched anime or Arcane with the fam, and then I ate food and did pills. After that, I had a 3.5-hour-long call with Celia and Esther, and that was mostly good, though, over a call that long, it's a mixed bag. Definitely glad we did, though. And then from there, I saved my game of life and started playing again in the morning. Upon loading my last consciousness state, I then worked for 5 hours, during which I mostly worked on this life email, bought food, watched Arcane, and then with the fam, and then Katie came over. I then tried to and try some video games out for my upcoming chemo before having Grace put like 1,000 rubber bands in my hair and going to sleep. And thus began salvage chemo. Mom took me in for my first go, and all things considered, it wasn't that bad. I mean, I definitely felt pretty darn sucky as I came home, but I didn't throw up, and I've felt better than I remember feeling. But to be fair, chemo is cumulative, and my, the last year of health has effectively reset my clock. So I'm sure how it feels the first round that I actually did chemo, like the objective first round, is probably equivalent to how I felt this first round. But what I have in my memory is the last round of 12 cycles from last year. So this definitely felt better than that. Hopefully that makes sense. This time I did not fast because I found in my research some evidence that fasting is probably bad for chemo's effectiveness. Hence, I got to eat upon getting home. And aside from everything sounding absolutely repulsive, it was nice to eat something. From there, I spent the rest of the day just trying to get through and distract myself. I watched shows with the fam, played a bit of a game I'm trying called Warframe, watched anime, and then slept. The nice thing about chemo, though, is after I got it, the pain in my arm and my chest went away. So that was super cool. It felt like, I could feel the tumor in my neck like actually shrinking. So that was also a very good feeling. I woke up the next morning feeling pretty good, honestly. But as the day wore on, I started to feel a lot worse. I did work on my cancer paper some, did some funime, and then made a massive mistake of working out. First of all, it was a mega wimpy workout. But also in the days afterwards, it killed me. Like, it turns out, on chemo, your recovery is very reduced. Which is obvious now that I think about it. But I didn't think about it, so yeah. Anyway, it was super exhausting, and I was super weak. And it started on multiple levels, and that was a mistake. Katie then came over, and I masked up and played Dutch Blitz with her and Grace and Alley Cat, but it was slow and feeling super gross, so it wasn't super fun. Once I got home, I played some more Warframe, did some funime, worked on my life demo again before ending the night with some scootering, just because I wanted to get outside. Oh, and then I read some too. The next morning, I did funime, did a brief meditation in the sun, napped because I was tired, had a really good meal that Mom and Dad made for me, did a tiny bit of work on this email, gamed some, walked around King's Rivers with Grace and Katie, but also maybe very tired, and then I tried a FaceTime call with M with the rest of them, and I was just cooked, so I had to go to bed. The weird thing is I pseudo-slept, though, and I didn't actually sleep until, like, literally 4:30 that morning. So, the thing about chemo, the thing about this chemo in particular is that it messes with, like, your hormones. And so, I can only guess this is how it feels to have a period, because my moods change crazily throughout the day. And, like, how tired or awake I am is just very strange. Like, that changes, too. So I can't sleep. So yeah, apparently my adrenal hormones got out of whack that night because I was just literally wired until 4 in the morning, and for no apparent reason. Hence, I just tried to kill time by reading, and then I was able to finally fall asleep. Then, weirdly, I naturally woke up in time for church, despite getting 4 hours of sleep, and I didn't feel normally tired the rest of the day, so I wasn't even sleep deprived. It makes no sense to me. But regardless, I went to church, talked with Joe during the service, had a bunch of lunch, and then I rode with Joe and Karina and got food on their EBT card. Thank you very muchly for sponsoring me. Ate at RJ's and played some Magic and had 2 games of Magic, which I should have won, but didn't win, because I wasn't paying attention. Neo then gave me a ride home, and then from there I funimade, did life and date work, and then started organizing a Magic teaching event, and decided to go on a late night run. And that was actually really good. I didn't make it nearly as far as I thought I would on the late night run, and I sucked, but it was really good exercise. The next morning I took pills, prepared for Magic teaching day, then Katie and I carpooled to the Myers, and I proceeded to teach her, Lily, and Karina Magic from the ground up. And I'm actually pretty proud of the way I did it, because Magic is a pretty complicated game, so I had to put together, a lot of thought to explain how to explain it in a not overwhelming way. When you're working with TE, inferior, and tertiary, you gotta be careful, because as soon as they feel overwhelmed, they just check out, and it's game over. However, with Katie and Karina, they felt fatigued, but both of them hung in there, and we made it through all the necessary content. Hence, I would call my Magic teaching session a success. It took us 3 hours, though. Here's the whiteboard that I made with all the things we learned. By the end of that, though, Katie was cooked, and since we carpooled, I decided I would take her back and help her recharge. Once I got home, I did funime and called and pills while calling with William, and that was fun, but also way too short, given, the things we need to talk about. William also needs more existential tear, because, he's inappropriately chill about AI. We then decided to watch Silence, me, Katie, and Grace, and that's the hardest movie ever to watch as a Christian. I've only watched it once before, and that was 3 years ago, and I assumed it wouldn't hit me like it did the first time, but I assumed wrong. That movie is actually like a sucker punch to your faith. Genuinely a horrible experience. I actually was genuinely upset afterwards, and it took me a while to snap out of it. Once I did, though, we had some decent conversations, and that were sparked by the movie, and I could tell that we were all kind of feeling the oof of the film. So yeah, we talked till 12:30 at night, and then we all went to sleep. The next morning, I began 3D printing some deck boxes, because I figured I might need to give some of those away to people who are starting Magic. I put all my clothes away, and then I made cancer vials, and then I got some work done on this email. At this point, I was going to be done with this already massive email, but lol, I sent it off to Jake to record it, and he made some attempts, and he couldn't get through it. Hence, he was like, bro, this email's my bane, give me the next one. So, it's now 20 days later, and not recorded. Thus, I shall be catching this email to the present once more, and then sending out that email, because if I was sending out 3 weeks late, that's too late for me. It feels anathema. So, we shall send it out as Big Junkus. Speaking of Big Junkus, I literally ate a whole pizza Casbah pizza because they had $1 slices. And if you've seen pizza Casbah pizza slices, you know what I mean. And then I did food made pills and some small tough stuff before I worked out the rest of the day. After that, Katie arrived with a bike in the back of her car, deeming her idea big-brained. Grace and I then got our own form of transportation, electric scooter and blades respectively, and we all set off to Vern's. One thing I will say, though, is with M gone, all the activities have become much more N-y. She was kind of our, like, stabilizing SI force. But honestly, I like it. Not M being gone, mind you, but the N-y trending activities. Here's a picture of us on our bike ride. Not gonna lie, I take great pleasure in capturing non-aesthetic photos of people. Everyone always wants to look so pretty, but ha! Now you look like a dork. And that's my doing. You're welcome. Anyway, it was a fun blade, though I will say Katie was slow, and this made me sad. However, we made it to Vern's before the sun went down. I got 7 rolls, and then on the way back, Katie and I stopped to play in the river while Grace just watched, which was lame. And I actually really enjoyed that detour. There were these like holes that seemed to serve no purpose whatsoever, but they also weren't full of water, so you could get in them. Gaze, I have a picture of those. Anyway, 'twas a pleasant detour. As the mosquitoes came out in force, we then hurried on our way, and fortunately, the bike path was a slight downhill on the way back, so we went way faster on the way back. It's crazy how much of a difference that made. And with a few brief stops at cobwebbed mini libraries, we then made it home as it got dark. I then took pills, and we all watched Megamind, genuinely a great movie, and I did a bit of reading before I went to bed. The next day was work, at which I read Mucho, took pills, and then did some cancer book work. I then got back, finished the book I was on, started a new one, did Foodame and pills before playing some Warframe with Joe and eventually Liam, because Joe was trying to get me to this really like complicated game and I got intimidated. And then I talked with Joe for a bit, watched Freedom with Grace, and then powered down. When chemo began anew, Joe was my chemo buddy this time around. After waiting ages and just doing her own things as I went in between appointments, we then finally got to the chemo part, and thanks to us bringing a folding table, we were able to play Mucho Magic. And I actually had a really good time. It was a very good way to pass the time, too. I've only ever talked during chemo before, so having a game to play was actually quite pleasant. Plus, I built a new deck that turns out it crushes in 1v1, so I may be conflating my joy of Magic with the joy of winning every game. Small chance of that. However, as the chemo started to hit me, I wasn't able to play Magic, so I talked about some ATI stuff, and yeah, that was chemo. Joe's rating as a chemo buddy, I would say 8 out of 10. Once I got back, I read some. Mom and Dad bought me some great food. I did Food with Grace, read some more, did some gaming, and then I received a gift that the Grace Gang all pitched to buy me, which is this epic red cloak, and I've been loving it. It's become my comfort cloak, and I wear it way too much to be socially normal. At this point, after treatment, I really started to feel bad, but, you know, the comfort cloak was a nice pick-me-up. Other than that, just did some more Funame, some more reading, even though I was dead tired, and the steroids was my sleep, so I couldn't sleep, and I just stayed awake for hours in bed feeling antsy. I got 5 hours of sleep that night, and once I woke up, I just kind of was like, well, it is what it is, and I tried to start the day. Obviously, I still felt gross, but I managed to read some. From there, I talked to April in the back of her truck at Southgate, during which I got really worn out, actually, and also turned out sunburned. But it was still a good conversation, and it was well worth it. I read and gamed some when I got home, and then at that point, I got my booster shot. See, they attach this like device to your arm that automatically sticks you with a needle and pumps some immune-boosting drug into your skin, into your arm after like your second chemo, because your white blood cells get so dangerous that they're like, well, we got to boost you or you will die. So that's cool, except it's nerve-wracking because you have this thing attached to your arm and you're gonna get stabbed at some point, but you don't know exactly when. So that's just lovely. The actual stab moment wasn't too bad, but it definitely startled me. After that, I finished rewatching Free with Grace. Again, fantastic anime. Read some, finished another book, and then slept. In the morning, I woke up, read, did Funime, and then craving conversation. I tried to focus my big brain thoughts with Grace and Mom. Oh, tried to discuss, not focus. And that went okay, but I definitely didn't feel satisfied. I then read some more before hanging Neo up and tried to discuss the same thoughts with him. And that conversation went better. He had some helpful contributions, but it still wasn't great because he wasn't able to attach to the moral nature of the content and view the subject objectively. Hence, I still felt disappointed. And at the end of that, we then pivoted to more rewarding topics. But unfortunately, the chemo fatigue killed me, and I just had to sleep. I then proceeded to sleep past church, started the day reading, did some Funime, and then read some more. Thereafter, I talked to Noah about the same topic, and finally found the convo I was looking for. It was beautiful, just like pure analytic bliss. Noah and I had many massive big brain moments, and I actually really liked that conversation. It solved the conundrum for me. Plus, it was just a ton of fun, and genuinely peak. Once I got done with that, I then did Funime with Grace, played some Magic over at Neo's house, and then I slept. I had work on Monday, during which Sela was spontaneously like, hey, you got somewhere for me to sleep as I'm coming through? And I was like, yes, probably, mostly, maybe, as I scrambled to put together a sleeping arrangement. I did a pitiful workout after work. I tried, but, chemo's brutal. And then I got Sela's air mattress set up, and then attended Monday night, during which benj came. He hasn't come for a long time, so that was great. And then I left early to meet Sela. She had been up for 40 hours straight, but I convinced her to go on a walk with me anyway. And we got deep-fried Oreos. It was a very good conversation, and it was good to see her. And then once we got back, we both just crashed. The next day I did in classes, try to set up a business account because I found this bonus that gives you $250 if you do, but then I did not realize you need a business to set up a business account. So that was awkward and also dumb. But we don't need to talk about that. Then, as I was about to head to art class, Noah Myers flagged me down, and since he and Lynn were chatting, I conversed with them, the two of them for a little bit, and then I did go to art class. But at the exact point that I got to art class, Ben texted me from his Europe trip, and the convo was uncharacteristically deep, so I was like, okay, well, I guess we're not going to art class. I then made a business account, and then, no, I made a business, and then went to a different FMBO branch, to then get the account set up, during which I got to banter about the old bank teller about philosophy stuff. Once I got back, I did Funime and YouTube. Grace joined Katie and I, and then all of us called M before calling it a night. I worked Wednesday, did Funime, read, went with Mom and Grace to the Japanese store and ate flavored bread while showing them anime. It was kind of fun to eat the iconic anime foods while watching anime. And then I finished the book I was on, scooted around CSU for a bit, and that was the day. The next morning, I did a history assignment, did Funime, and then I had an argument with William that was not the intellectual sort, but we did work it out, and now we're chill. And then I journaled about the argument and slept, because my emotional capacity is unfortunately quite negligible, and for some reason, I get really tired once it's exhausted. Upon being resurrected and rejuvenated, I did Funime, went shopping with Grace, and then we and her got boba and chilled overlooking the reservoir and chatted, of which here's a picture. Again, taking unflattering photos brings me joy. That was really nice, actually. Good to spend the time with Grace. Once I got back down, I bladed Neo's, played some Magic, but then I realized I was too tired to blade back, so Neo's kind of taking me out. I then did Read and Funime, and then slept. The next morning, I watched Dear Kristen videos with Mom and Grace, and those were actually so funny. Oh no! Sorry, I'm fiddling with the thing, because this is so long! But I'm back, we're good. I then read for a while before Katie came over, and then she joined Grace, Mom, and I on a trip to Estes. Mom had a photo shoot to do, and didn't want to do it alone, hence the trip, and so we all just kind of like chilled in the ink brew doing our respective tasks till she finished. I got through like 70 more pages of my book, Katie got through her homework, and Grace got some art done. And then we got pizza at Mom's favorite pizza place before we went down, and that was Big Benno. Grace butchered I Will Say Songs the whole drive back. It was pretty funny. From there, it was pills, anime, reading, some weird autoimmune systems because of the Pembro, and then I slept. The next morning, I finally finished my mindfulness book. Oh my gosh, that thing is chunky. Like, literally 600 pages of breathe through your toes. So that was rewarding. I then did Funime and pills, read some of my next book, worked out weekly. aka not like a week, but without energy, weekly. Yeah, anyway. Made pill boxes, listened to podcasts, did more Funime and pills. And then Mom and Grace did this like relaxation spa thing for me spontaneously, and that was really nice. I actually super appreciated that. From there, I called Jordan, and that was big good, and then I took pills, and I slept. Sunday, I attended church, played the Mistborn game with Micah, Sam, and Seth at Lunch Bunch, did Funime upon getting back, found out how hypnotizable I am, and just nerded out about that topic to Grace and Katie, though lol, Grace was not having it, and she tried to keep changing the subject. The three of us then played some Dutch Blitz in the front yard before Katie ended up asking Mom about her very Catholic history, and I mostly listened. However, at the end, I pointed out an inconsistency in Mom's method of determining what to believe and hoped she would think about it more, which I think is unlikely will actually happen, but we'll see. From there, Grace then fell asleep on the couch, and Katie and I talked about philosophy, and I gave her a book to start her studies. I think she might actually get into that, so that's exciting. The other thing that I did that night was then journal. The next morning, I woke up early, did some Funime and pills before going to work, and then I got home and did more Funime and pills and some Magic games on Monday night, where they were really close, and it's very fun. And then Funime with Grace before going to sleep. The next morning was different, in that I got a massage. I found a Groupon for one, I was like, bet, because massages are fire. Very expensive fire, granted, but fire. I shall reiterate, if you haven't tried a massage, you need to try one. They're amazing. After the massage, I felt very relaxed and ready to take on round 2 of chemo. I read some, did some credit card stuff, then drove up to the airport and waited at the cell phone lot Wendy's till Ben got out, and then we had a pretty good combo on the way back. I think he took my big brain thought revelation that I cooked up with Noah personally, and, it was just meant to be informative, so that was unfortunate. But regardless, it was very good, and I'm glad he's back. Once we got back to the house, Ben shared all his tales with the fam, and for those of you who don't know, Ben stayed in Europe while the rest of us left Georgia back for the States. And he was there for like a month, just backpacking around. And seemingly, it was a very formidable time for him. Listening to him recount it was quite enjoyable. Once that all finished up, I took him back home, and it was, and then I went on a late night run, which was actually very nice. And I was able to do that because I had a whole week to recover from chemo, so that was big rewarding. I had work on Wednesday. I'm still grinding through those cancer notes. Did Funime upon getting back, and then Jake and I went on a walk that was actually really fun. We indulged our Essien childish ways, and then found this really cool tree, and had a fun argument where we were able to see each other's sides and come to a conclusion. Those kind of arguments are just the best. Here is a picture. I think it's such a cool tree, personally. Do you see this place? Ugh, so cool. Also, a deranged bird flew into the house, and we were talking on the front porch. So I don't know what was wrong with that bird, but we spent 15 minutes trying to just get it back out. Anyway, the TLDR is we didn't do much else. It was a very good hangout. It was very well rounded and very super enjoyable. Once he left, I proceeded to buy a really bad Chipotle burrito because they didn't stick and cook their rice. And then Sam treat, and I called until like 1:30 in the morning on a whim. I haven't talked to him in ages, so that was good. The next morning, I called Johanna, and that was a much needed conversation. Things are getting better in that department. Did Funmei, got a call from M and talked her through being homesick, and then Jess arrived and accompanied me to chemo. And she was an excellent chemo buddy. Her FI was a little bit scary, because FI DOMs are always scary. They see things, man. They see things. But yeah, I was super grateful to have her, and she really sacrificed to make it happen. So yeah, I felt very valued. I really do enjoy both Jess now, and I think there's a lot of merit to having friends that are significantly older than you. Grace is leaving really soon, so people come over as a bit of a send-off. However, I was dead, so I was just like, hi, people, and then I tried to go to sleep. However, unfortunately, steroids are evil and did not permit me to go to sleep, hence I did not sleep till 2. And I just talked to various people to myself until then. Honestly, ever since chemo, I felt off. Like, something in the new regimen causes my emotions to be weird, and it super sucks. Like, I have, these weird mood swings, and I don't even know what to do to handle it, because usually my emotions are very even keel, with the occasional spike, but this is, like, very weird. Everything has, had a feeling attached to it. It's dumb stuff that will trigger these, like, massive feelings. Both good, but mostly bad. And I reiterate that, like, when this happened to me last time, I still think this is true. This must be what it feels like to have a period, or at least to be a feeler. My gratitude for not being female and not being a feeler have grown tenfold. Actually, how do you guys live like this? Like, no wonder you can't be productive. You have, like, 7,000 tons of raw emotion in the way. It's actually the worst. I genuinely hate having this much feeling in my life. Anyway, the point is I've been having massive mood swings and I don't feel like myself, and I also, like, for once in my life, don't feel confident, which is super disorienting. And I didn't realize it till I was gone, but apparently I just have a super high base level of self-assurance and confidence that I rely upon a ton. Because, it's always been there, so it seems reasonable to rely on it. But now I actually don't feel super confident and don't really know how to act or what to do. And again, very disorienting. Thankfully, though, it started to get better, and I'm beginning to bounce back, so yeah. But still, yuck. Anyway, Friday I did anime, Funime, watched wasted time. Played Magic with Joe, did a bit of video games, played Magic with Neo and City at their house, did Funime, and then slept. And as for yesterday, my moodiness reached its peak, and I genuinely wasted the whole day. Like, people came over and I couldn't bring myself to hang out with them, even though I wanted to. Grandpa arrived and he talked to me for quite a while, and that threw me off, and I kept distracting myself with video games and trying to, like, go on a walk and a scooter ride. I tried eating mochi, and I tried doing a drive and listening to sad music and journaling and praying and even meditating on the hood of my car up in the mountains, and literally nothing happened. Well, things happened, but nothing helped. Anyway, it was genuinely just the worst. As for today, I'm still feeling off, but, I've resolved to be productive despite that. Thus, that's just meant to work on this email, so huzzah, go me. Still, I'm definitely feeling better than yesterday. I skipped church because I was feeling really off, though. I tried talking with Mom and Grace and Ben about it, and in all cases, I don't feel like they resolved much. Mostly they were like, ha! Now you know how we felt at the time. So, yeah. But they said it with more empathy than that. I also talked to Grandpa despite how I was feeling, and as far as Grandpa's conversations go, it was a decently good one. It was all about, like, physics and stuff. So yeah, still rough feeling this way. However, apparently most of you humans deal with this all the time, so what am I even complaining about? There you go. Welcome to the present via a 16,300 word email. You're deeply welcome.